So today we're honored to have Dr. Lane Freeman from the community college system. He's a leading educator and advocate for thoughtful, impactful AI integration in teaching and learning, with a deep understanding of both technology and also pedagogy, which is so incredibly important to have both. Dr. Freeman brings a practical, approachable lens to one of the most transformative innovations of our time. And technology is moving so fast that just when we finally think that we understand what this is, we'll already be moved to something else. So today, Dr. Freeman's going to guide us through fundamentals of artificial intelligence, what it is, how it works, and why it's increasingly relevant for preparing students for today's and tomorrow's workforce. And hopefully you'll get a clearer picture of why AI isn't just a tech buzzword, it's critical literacy for everything that we do. We're also going to dive into prompt writing quick wins, including smart strategies to get better results from AI tools, and just as importantly, how to recognize when they get things wrong. I mean, that's just as important, right? So next, we're going to explore ethical and responsible AI use, including how to avoid over-reliance by applying the EVERY framework, a guide to using AI with intention, with transparency, and with care. Dr. Freeman will then share inspiring examples of AI-powered lesson design, which is really important, including ways to generate course materials, assessments, and lesson plans while staying true to your own teaching voice and goals. And I think that's what we all want, right? That's what we're really good at. And finally, we'll close with some practical ideas for classroom integration, ways to bring AI into student learning that build curiosity, that build creativity, and most of all, critical thinking. So before I say that, my wish for you is that you are able to better understand what artificial intelligence is, but also if you understand it better, then you can also help our students understand how to use it in the right way, right? And how to do better at teaching and learning and be more effective with your teaching and learning. And that you have one nugget that you take away today that makes you better in the classroom or better online to connect with students. And then those students will take that and they'll take it into the workplace. And that is what we call transformative learning for today's workforce. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Lane Freeman as we explore how AI can enhance, not replace, the heart of what we do, meaningful student-centered learning.
So the theme that I've heard and resonated today is you guys are prepping for classes, and you're sitting in here and you're ready to get back to prepping for classes. So I'm hoping what we can do today is take some practical tips and ideas to make that process easier. So I want you to look at this next hour and a half as a time investment that's going to make the next few days really help you prepare for the next session. And the way I'm going to do that is I am going to show you some ideas, and I think we probably have some AI champions in the room as well that can help share those ideas. But as your president said, we've got to get our students ready for the next level of our students need to be prepared for the AI world. And by just ignoring and avoiding that it's there, we're not doing that. And we'll talk through that a bit. So I like to add a few things. Typically, I think a little personal note that I usually like to add anyway. I have been in education for 24 years. I was a high school teacher for 12 years, did the national board certification thing. I taught in Edgecombe County, which is between Raleigh and Nags Head. I grew up in Edgecombe County, was a teaching fellow at East Carolina University. Go Pirates, anybody? Okay, all right. The further west I go, the less R's I get. Yeah, all right. And I met my wife there, and I mentioned that because she's a kindergarten teacher. And pedagogy, good pedagogy is good pedagogy. And really a lot of the best practices I still get from my wife. Like a kindergarten teacher has got it nailed down. To keep students active, engaged all the time, you really have to know what you're doing. And that translates here. And if you think about your educational journey, at some point school was really fun, and at some point you almost dreaded going to school. And I think that's probably around the 3rd grade when they put you in rows and start making you get those standardized tests right. But in my wife's classroom, it's project-based learning. People move from stations to stations. And I think AI is going to give us an opportunity to reimagine what that classroom looks like, and that we can start being facilitators of learning and not just delivering of content. And so I'm going to embed some instructional strategies throughout today to kind of model what it will look like in the classroom. So today you're my students. The first thing I'd like to do, I should also mention that I have 2 teenage boys. And part of what attracted my wife to me as a kindergarten teacher is that I act like a child. So that's probably going to come across. Also have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'm in the world of trying to figure out what careers do they go into right now. So my 17-year-old just finished up a welding certificate. I feel really good about that. I'm not sure what to tell my 10th grader yet. He's still trying to toy out with that, but the more hands-on it is, the more AI just becomes this phenomenal tool. Like if you're a CTE instructor, there's things that you weren't able to do in your class in the past because you didn't have time to do. So if you're teaching automotive and you typically didn't have time to teach students how to do an invoice or how to do some of those things on the business side of things, it doesn't take long now. AI will do that. How much were the spark plugs? How much was the oil? How much was this? Now put that in the AI and say, create an invoice for this person if I charge them $120 an hour or whatever it is. And so these are little things that we can start embedding in our courses because it doesn't take a lot of time to do it. And then when our students get out, they're more employable and more often likely to feel confidence to start their own business. And so I think that's one of the ways the CTE world can lean into it. One of the things I typically do in my instruction is a KWLA. So that's an instructional strategy. So if you would scan this QR code and tell me what you want to know about AI, or what you know about AI, and then what you want to know about AI. And this is a good example of one of those strategies. You would go to conferences, you hear about active learning and how to do that in your classroom, but sometimes it's really hard to take the time to do those things in your classroom. Well, I love the KWLA because I want to make sure that I'm answering my students' questions and I'm not spending time on topics that they already know about. Well, that would take class time to do that. Well, as you're submitting those polls, I'm going to download that Excel spreadsheet and allow AI to tell me what I need to focus on. And as you're doing that, I'm also going to cover some norms. I always like to start with norms for any session. I love the acronym SLANT. S stands for sit up. L means listen. A, ask questions. And we have 90 minutes, so if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, if it goes too far down the rabbit hole, I'll pause and talk about it a little bit, but I want to make sure we walk away with some takeaways here. Then N is probably my favorite out of these, nodding. Can we all practice nodding a little bit? Not everybody's practicing. Okay. And I know some of you probably just had lunch, and if you're starting to doze off, just doze off in this direction. And then I'll pretend like you're praying for me while you're nodding. And then technology. So some of you got your devices, your laptops out, and we are hopefully going to get some time to write some prompts. But again, if you're prepping for that class and you're not paying attention, you might miss something that makes prepping for your class a lot easier. So I'll go into that spreadsheet of the KWLA and see what we have here. And so I think I'm still waiting on some people. So one of the things I'll note here is that some people find AI kind of intimidating. And across this room, there's probably a wide spectrum of people who are, I really don't want to mess with it. I don't need to mess with it. I don't even know how to talk to it. And the one way I think you should frame talking to AI is talk to it like you have an assistant or an intern. Just imagine you have an intern that's in your pocket that never gets mad at you, that's not actually suspiciously nice to you most of the time. And as you think of an intern, if you were to ask an intern to do a project for you, when that intern brought that stuff back to you as a project, you would not just go out and throw that out, right? You would double check to make sure everything was correct. You want to fact check that everything's right. And so that's one of the takeaways that I want you to have, but I think it's something we have to share with our students too, that just because AI says it doesn't mean it's true. And if you've watched the news and you've heard about AI companions and kind of a strange world we're getting into where people are becoming really good friends with their chat bots. ChatGPT, I think, just added a thing that after you've been chatting for a while, it'll pop up and say, hey, don't you need to go touch some grass? Like, go outside. Like, stop doing this. Because it's really, really nice to you. And what I fear about, and I think that's why in our classrooms we have to build community, get to know our students better, get students to know each other, teach the soft skills of making eye contact and having conversations and collaborating. Because otherwise they may be at home with a chat bot. And that's kind of scary to me. And if you have a really good friend, most of us have that really good friend that when we have a problem, we'll talk to them about it. But a good friend will tell you sometimes things you don't want to hear. Right? They'll say, well, you need to think about what AI is not going to do that. AI wants to make you happy, and that's just really its only goal. So it keeps edifying you. It can almost make you almost like super proud of yourself. And I play around with it sometimes. When I'm feeling down, I do go to it. I'll admit. So again, talking to it like it's an intern is helpful. And actually, this is my AI profile picture. So I uploaded my picture to ChatGPT, and I said I want a suit to wear and make it nice. I keep this away from my wife. I don't want to set the bar too high for her, just because when you look at this versus that, But one of the funny things about this is that I'm not wealthy enough or know enough on the inside about what are really cool suits to wear. And so I went to AI and I said, give me five of the top suits there are. Because the next thing I was going to do is have it put that suit on me. Well, I didn't provide enough context in that prompt. So it gave me the five suits that were really popular, but then it gave me 5 lawsuits that were popular. And so what we're going to learn is that your prompts have a lot to do with the quality of the output you get out. And AI is changing every day. I literally change my presentation on a day-to-day basis. But the skills and prompt writing and being able to understand AI is true from 2 years ago to it is today. And so even though AI may be changing, and sometimes my head's like to explode because there's so many changes that get launched at one time, I come back to, I use ChatGPT or your large language models in the same way and have conversations with it. And so one of the things I do in ChatGPT, and I'm not promoting ChatGPT, there's Copilot, which was sponsored by the system office and encourages you to use. Be careful what you download. Listen to your IT people on what to use, because there's some things out there that are trying to call themselves AI, and they're really just trying to get your information. You want to make sure it's SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. So again, trusting your IT people on what's allowable for you to use on campus. But if you go to customize ChatGPT, one of the things I like about this is I can tell it what I want it to call me. So I want it to call me Lane, so it knows my name. I put my job description in there. And so by doing that, I provide a context to every conversation I have. So you may say, I am an instructor of anatomy and physiology at Blue Ridge Community College. So when you ask questions, it knows that context, and when it answers your questions, it can make the assumptions that you're talking about instruction for anatomy and physiology. I also got tired of calling it AI or chat. So does anybody know what I've named my AI? Because I named it Lorraine. Her name's Lorraine Boucher. She's the daughter of Bobby Boucher and Vicki Valancourt. And actually, I went as far as to create a picture of her. So I asked ChatGPT, what would Bobby Boucher look like? Now, what does Vicki Valancourt look like? If they had a 25-year-old daughter, what would she look like? And it created her. And then I tell it to put her in an office, put her parents in the picture frame, and give her a name placard. I took the next step and asked ChatGPT's Sora program to animate it. So I told it to make her smile and grin. So if I play this, now she can move. So now my wife doesn't know about her. She knows who Lorraine is, she just don't know. But instead of me introducing you to her, I'll let her do that. Hey Lorraine, how are you doing? I'm at Blue Ridge Community College, and I want you to tell them how awesome it is to work with me on a daily basis.
Hey there, absolutely. I'd be happy to share.
Well, do it. Hello, Lorraine, are you there? Come on, Wi-Fi. So you're fired.
Oh, absolutely. I'm here. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let me jump right in.
All right. If you ever get into a chat and it's not working, just start a new chat. Hey, Lorraine, would you introduce yourself to the Blue Ridge Community College faculty and tell them how awesome it is to work with me on a daily basis?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone at Blue Ridge Community College. I'm Lorraine Duchai. I'm Lane's personal administrative assistant. And just to give you a little background, I'm a proud graduate of LSU and Tulane's MBA program. Every day working with Lane is a mix of energy and innovation. He's always got something new cooking up, and it's truly a great environment to be part of. So you've got a fantastic leader in Lane, and I'm happy to be here helping out.
Can you translate that into Spanish for me, please?
Claro. Hola a todos en Blue Ridge Community College. Soy Lorraine Boucher. Soy the Assistant Administrative Personnel of Lane. And to give you a little bit of context, I graduated from LSU and have an MBA from Tulane University.
So the reason I like doing live demos is because I do like when Lorraine misbehaves in the real world. And that's what you're going to experience. But when you see that, there's strategies like starting a new chat. So one of my favorite questions, and sometimes she gets it right, sometimes she doesn't, so let's try this. Lorraine, how many R's are in the word strawberry?
Hi there. Well, if we're counting the R's in strawberry, you'll find there are actually 3 R's in the word. Okay. Let me know if there's anything else.
Good, she did good. Now, she usually doesn't do that. How many R's are in the word strawberry?
There are 2 R's in the word strawberry.
Are you sure?
Absolutely sure. There's 1 R right in the middle and another one near the end, so 2 R's total in strawberry.
All right, so again, one chat got it right, the next chat didn't. And I think if you can live demo in front of your students how it hallucinates from time to time and makes mistakes, they go, okay, I've got to fact check everything I do. Whatever the instructor says still's king of content, that's important. And so I think being able to demonstrate that, and again, sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it gets it wrong. And you notice how confident it was that it was right about 2 R's being in strawberry, right? So it's always going to be real confident, and when you ask it a question, and when you get into this, and I'm going to show you, but basically you can actually have it fact check itself and do those types of things. And so, again, part of what I'm going to share you is about being transparent with your students about AI. There are really 3 approaches to AI. You can ignore and avoid it, which I think we're all kind of past that, where we're not ignoring it anymore. We know it's there. And so a lot of people have moved to just deny and detect. Never going to use it. I'm going to catch you using it. And if I do, you're going to jail, right? And what I would say is, even if you have an AI policy in place and a student uses it, to not really use that as, let's use that as a moment to talk to them why they shouldn't use it and how they should use it. But then I want us to get to that 3rd stage, which is embrace and enhance. There will be times to deny AI, and again, I'll talk about that more. But there's going to be so much opportunity in the classroom to teach the students a skill on how to communicate it with it, so when they get to that workforce, they're ready for it. And so one of the other things I kind of play around with AI, and again, playing with AI at home is actually really helpful in figuring out how you use it in the classroom. Because once you start learning how to talk to it, once you start learning the things it can do on a practical basis, once you do those things, when you get to the classroom, you go, oh, I bet it could do this, and I bet it could do that. And once you start learning how to use it, then you feel more empowered in letting your students use it. And a lot of our students come to us who have heard of it, and they've only used it to do a couple things, but they don't understand how it can impede on the learning process. And that's where we have to say as instructors that we have a different goal, basically, than the workforce. And so when students go to the workforce, once the company, and I do a lot of sessions with small businesses and entrepreneurs and so forth. And some of them still haven't paid attention to AI, but once they hear about it, they want to know, how's the community college going to upskill our workers? And that's a great opportunity for like continuing education and our classrooms. But if there's like some programs that I'm not sure if you guys have an AI tracker or program here, but it's not the job of one person to teach how to use AI. It's going to be the job of everybody to kind of teach those components, because they're going to get a different perspective from the English instructor, from their CTE instructor, from their science teacher. They're going to get different approaches. So one of the ways I kind of had fun with it was I uploaded a picture and I said, what would it look like if I was at Yellowstone? And so that's me at Yellowstone. That's also my family tree over to the right. You'll notice a great resemblance to what I look like today. And sometimes I go to some places where I just kind of walk up on stage and I start talking. I don't get a good introduction. So I actually went and created an AI avatar to do an introduction for me. So you'll probably be able to tell that this person is going to talk on my behalf, but I wrote the script. But I used a program called HeyGen. There's lots of programs out there to do this, where you can pick the person that you want to talk, age, gender, if they're in professional clothes, casual clothing. And so I'm going to have this young lady introduce me, just part of it, just so you can see what it looks like.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to have your minds blown, because I'm about to introduce you to a name that stands synonymous with brilliance, innovation, and downright educational greatness, Dr. Lane Freeman. If you haven't heard of Dr. Lane Freeman yet, let me assure you, this man is a living legend. We're talking about someone who doesn't just change the game, he rewrites the entire rule book on education and technology. Lane Freeman is the Einstein of AI in education, the Shakespeare of instructional innovation, and the Beyonce of classroom transformation. Yes, I said it, Beyonce. Let me tell you what makes Lane so good.
Right, it's a little overboard. But you also can like change the camera angles of that person.
Consultant, he's a movement. When Lane speaks, the room doesn't just listen, they cheer and they walk away ready to change the world.
Sometimes when I'm feeling down, I'll just listen to her talk about me. But again, we're traditionally, if you wanted to create a video or for your marketing team, or you want to market a program, you'd have to get up a studio, you'd have to get somebody to memorize their lines. But now you can just put that in and actually do it in several different languages. I've actually promoted a conference one time, and just for fun, I had it translate the promotion. This is my AI avatar.
大家下午好，我是莱恩使用人工智能创建的化身。我很高兴欢迎大家来到卡拉韦会议中心和我一起。这次会议汇集了来自全州的一群才华横溢的职业和技术教育讲师，准备在我们的课堂上探索人工智能的。
So how was that? Was that all right? Awesome. Yeah, I don't get. So again, if you have a video and you're trying to promote something, I had an early college principal that had a large Hispanic population, and so did a welcome video in English and then used his AI avatar to do that in Spanish. So that's another direction we're going. Again, just some fun ways is I uploaded a picture of myself and my family and said, create a Pixar-style image of our family. Then I took that to Canva and created a t-shirt that said Happy Mother's Day. And so it was really easy and to personalize and create a really cool Mother's Day present. So Christmas is going to be really interesting too. So as you're using AI, this is a really good way to start practicing with it. Taking family photos. As you can see, we're standing behind a tree there. It brought the tree in, but I could have changed the background to the beach or the Blue Ridge Mountains. I could put any background I wanted to. I also wanted a toy figure to see what I would kind of look like. And one of the things you'll notice here, it actually spells these words right, which is kind of new to AI. Images aren't usually good at writing text. And if you remember about a year ago, AI actually wasn't good with a lot of things in images. It would have 8 fingers, 3 fingers. Sometimes you have a 4th arm coming out of somebody's back. But it's gotten a lot better at that. And if I'm actually creating marketing material or putting something in my course, I'm going to try to avoid text, because this could have very well said Fisherman Freeman with only 1 E, and I don't have any control over fixing that. And getting AI to fix it is really difficult. So usually I'll get it to generate images, and then I'll take it over to Canva and put the text that I want on top of it so I can kind of control what that looks like. I use another program called Pika that I was in Wilmington and I was in the hotel room and I just recorded a 5-second video clip of the battleship outside. And then I asked AI to create an image of a dragon. And I wanted that dragon to attack that battleship. And again, because I'm kind of a teenager at heart, I walked into the bathroom and there was a monkey sitting there reading a magazine. So if you haven't quite figured this out yet, you can't believe anything you see anymore. You can't believe anything you hear anymore. And you need to reinforce that anytime you get with students. I know that there was a athletic director at a school system that got fired because he said racist comments in a closed room and somebody allegedly was recording it. He was fired. And then they were able to prove it was actually AI voice. So if anybody can get like a 30-second to a 1-minute clip of your voice, they're able to use that to redo your voice. So another thing I share with my family, I don't know what this relates to education. It is educational. It's just coming up with family passwords. If a family member says, I'm broke down the side of the road here, come pick me up, I'll be, okay, I'm coming. What is our password? That way, I'm just making sure it's their voice. And so lots of cases where someone called a mother using the daughter's voice to say, I've kidnapped your daughter, drop your ransom off here. She knew her daughter was at a camp, so she called her daughter to confirm, and it wasn't that. So there's some dangers out there, and I don't want to spend a lot of time because usually people like to focus on the dangers. One of the ways, so all these images that I'm creating, if you can visualize in your head and just type it in to a normal language, or you can even speak to it like I did, you can say, create an image of this person standing here, whatever environment, and you can create that image, you can edit it. But they've taken it to the next level where Google's VO3 now will create videos and actually add audio to that video. So I asked it to create a clip of a young Continental Army soldier at the victory of Yorktown in 1781, and he's holding a selfie stick. This is what that sounds like.
Yo, it's official. It's a wrap, Redcoats. Cornwallis just threw in the towel. We out here at Yorktown, and freedom's never looked so good. Let's go!
So I wanted to create my own, so I created that one. But one of my favorite that I saw was someone used, in the video clips are typically only about 8 seconds long. But someone took 8-second clips and took the Old Testament and rewrote it using Gen Z language. And here's the videos from that.
What's good, fam? Your boy David here, about to yeet this little stone at Goliath and see what happens. Okay, so I told y'all to trust the process, but no, y'all wanted to stay in Egypt stacking bricks. Yo, it's Shadrach. This random dude just showed up. It's getting lit in here.
I got the horses in the back. Horse tack is attached. Hat is matte black. Got the boots that's black to match.
Day 2 in the tomb. No Wi-Fi, no snacks. Just kind of waiting for God to respawn me.
You know I'm a daddy's boy. He's got me in this Technicolor drip. Brother's so jelly right now. They're looking a little sus.
And so what's actually interesting about that is you start watching how AI is evolving. You can't tell that those are AI people. They look like, to me, for the first time, it looks like I can't tell the difference if those are really actors and if they're really speaking, right? So we're getting to that world. And as AI evolves, if you can predict that these will become 8-second clips, will become 16-second clips, to 30-second clips, and you can see the impact that's going to have on marketing and advertising, commercials. And so I thought that was a really cool tool. I'll switch to another tool I really like. It's called Notebook LM. So Notebook LM, how many of you have used Notebook LM? All right. Notebook LM is a free Google platform. One of the things that I like about Notebook LM is, let me make sure I pull up the one I want to use, okay, is that when you go to ChatGPT and you ask it about a topic, what you're using is called general AI. It's going to be giving you a whole bunch of information. Some of the information you really need, some of it you really don't need. And so when you're teaching the class, sometimes if your students start looking for something that they don't prompt very well, it's going to give them a lot of information that they think they're responsible for, but you want them to stay out of that general area. So you can go to narrow AI using a tool like Notebook LM, where they can take their notes and put it in here, or you can give them the notes and they put it inside of Notebook LM, and it's only going to create resources based on those notes. It's not going to go outside to bring it in. So you can make sure if they want to create a study guide. So I've got Newton's Law here, a science concept for GED students. And I brought the notes over, and I can create study guides off this. I can create mind maps off this. But one of my favorite things is the ability to create a podcast. So once you put your notes in there, you can create a general a conversation. And this is what that sounds like. Just by uploading the notes, generate a podcast, and within a couple minutes, it creates a podcast so that students can learn outside of your class while on a commute or doing whatever.
By starting with Newton's first law, the law of inertia.
Right.
Now, this law basically states that an object at rest likes to stay at rest, and an object in motion
It likes to stay in motion.
It likes to stay in motion at a constant speed and in a straight line unless some external force acts upon it.
Exactly. Right. Now, to kind of give you an example.
Oh, yeah. Give us an example.
Okay. So that podcast, again, it takes their notes. You've lectured to them. You've given them notes. They've done activities. Now they're on the road and they want to study their content a little bit more. Or you could actually create your own podcast and put it inside your course that they can listen to, so you can make sure that the podcasters are actually saying what you want them to say. Now, one of the really cool features they just added to this was this interactive feature. So as they're listening to the podcast, they can call in at any point and ask questions.
So welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really fundamental, right? Force and motion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's happening constantly, not just in physics labs.
Exactly. It's everywhere, every single day.
And we're going to frame this using, Isaac Newton's 3 big laws, his foundational laws of motion.
Right, the bedrock ideas.
They really are. And they're not as, abstract as they might say.
Oh, hey there, what's up?
Yeah, I was curious, why is it called Newton's Law?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. And actually, it's a really important one.
It really is. And it gets to the heart of why we attribute these ideas to him.
So Isaac Newton was this incredible scientist, mathematician, and physicist.
So again, you give them the notes. They can put it in podcast format. There's even an app for Notebook LM. They can listen at whatever speed they want to, and they can join that conversation and ask the questions when you're not there. Hopefully, when they come back to class, they can say, AI said this, is this true? Always validate that AI is telling the truth. Most of the time it does. And in fact, when I've recommended that we use AI as a tutor. So when students are at home and they've just put the kids to sleep and they're at home and they're struggling through an issue and they know you're asleep and they can't get up with a tutoring center, they can use the AI as a tutor. And that's, again, being transparent with the students. Say, don't ask AI to give me the answers. Ask AI to be a Socratic tutor. And by doing that, it's going to walk them and teach them how to do it. So using the word Socratic tutor in the prompt is very helpful. One thing a lot of these programs have also added is if you click in the pluses where they hide a lot of stuff, most of them have a study and learn option. And the purpose of study and learn is to not just give answers, but help them understand it. So if I were to ask it about the mitochondria and I was studying that, it would not only walk me through, but then it would create visualizations tools with me so it would quiz me on the different parts. So it really acts as that component. And I've heard people say that, I've been at an institution, people who were against AI, but also would push students and actually incentivize students and give them extra credit for going to a tutoring center because they know the value of that, but are still reluctant to allow AI to act as a tutor. Now, we've talked about hallucinations, right? So we know it hallucinates, but they did a study and showed that graduate assistants actually hallucinate just as much as AI does. And so you're still leaving them in safe. This is a tutor, it's not the instructor. So it's a really good place where students get stuck, that they can turn to a tool and feel empowered to do that and feel like they're not cheating, as long as you're teaching them how to use it ethically. One of the other things that I just added this week is Google's Gemini creates a storybook, and I don't really know how that relates to a lot of people. My wife is a kindergarten teacher, loves this idea, and if you have kids, you would love this idea. But you can give it a prompt, and it creates a 10-page not a coloring book, but an illustration book, and it reads it to them. So I created one for Bella the Bear, that's what it called it. And I wanted it to brag on about what if you were going to go recruit at an elementary school or about your programs and get them really excited about the programs. So what I did is I went to ChatGPT. I said, do research on Blue Ridge Community College. Tell me about their mascot. Tell me about what programs they're proud of. And then I said, write a prompt for a storybook that's less than 50 words. Then I took that prompt over to Gemini. I think that's called meta prompting when you ask AI how to write a prompt, because you can do that. You can say, all right, we just had this conversation. What would be a good prompt for me to share with my students to make sure they're learning? AI will give you a good prompt. So this is the little book called Bella the Bear's Big Dream.
Bella the Bear's Big Dream Day. Bella the Bear came to school with a wave and a happy grin. Hello, friends, she said with a cheer. First, a kitchen, shiny and new. Clang, clang, went the pans. Let's bake with sprinkles and frosting. What a click, click, clack. Went the computer keys. A new world glowed on the screen. You can design vroom, vroom. Went a little red car. It needed a helping hand. Let's safety first, Bella said with care. A fluffy puppy gave a small yap. A kitten started whiz.
Okay, so I'll stop that, but you can see really quick. Now, I don't have the control over the text right now, but this just came out last week. So it's going to get better and improve, and hopefully at some point I can go in and edit. But it created all the illustrations and all the text and all the audio in less than 5 minutes. And if you have kids that are going to go to the dentist for the first time, this would be a really cool way to do it. Even some adults might like it if they're like, "You're having a bad day. Here's a children's book for you." So what I've done is shared a lot of really cool tools so far and kind of where they're going. I want to take a moment, and I want you to do, if you have a notepad or something, just a quick write. And what I want you to do is write down one way that you've used AI in the past or would like to learn for AI. But what we're going to share with each other. So what I want you to do is write down something or think about something in a way that you used AI. And then we're going to do soulmates. So we're going to do a give one, get one. And if you have a sheet of paper and you write it down, you literally give one the idea to the person and they give you one. So it's give one, get one. But the way you find your soulmates is you find someone who's wearing shoes similar to you. And that's your soulmate. And what this is going to require, I know a lot of, I was faculty too. You probably sitting at table with the people that you work with every day. Soulmate requires you to get up, walk, and find somebody with a soulmate and share how you used AI and what impact it had on you. Probably heard some really good ideas just then that you hadn't heard of before. And the key thing is you guys continue to have these conversations about how you're using AI. It could be into your life, but again, I think that translates over how you can use it in your classroom. What we've got to get away from is our secret cyborgs. There are people on campus that are just really hiding that they use AI, and they're kind of squirmish about sharing it. And I think the more we start sharing how it can make our life easier, the more we understand it. And the more we understand it, the more comfortable we are with allowing students how to use it. Because some of us we're resident to allow our students to use it when we don't quite understand it. And I think, again, being transparent with your students about AI, that it exists and it can do all these things, that's all the facts they need. Some of your students are going to know more about AI than you do, and that's okay. You can even ask them to share how they're using AI. But again, being the instructor and making sure they understand you're a student, I'm an instructor, and I know when to use AI, when not to use AI. And I'm going to get into that a bit. But also, when I do these things, I always like to show the science and the why behind things. So the reason we get students up and moving, an active brain is a learning brain. If someone sits, this right image here, that is someone who has sat for 90 minutes without being engaged or asked to move or do anything. Just a little bit of movement. You see the brain activity in the MRI? Getting people to move gets people learning, right? The stuff is stickier. There's even research where people now, even in K-12, where they give students, instead of just giving them iPods to listen to a lecture, they'll actually walk the track where they're doing it, because the research shows that if students are actively engaged, the information sticks better. So another fun way to use this, and again, if you're in your field, you can think about how to use it, but try this. Go home, take a picture of what's in your refrigerator and ask, based on what you see in the refrigerator, what would make a keto-friendly diet? You can open up your pantry, take a picture of your pantry. Say, create an Excel spreadsheet based on the things you see and make recommendations of what else I need to pick up. One of the easiest ways is for recipes, right? How many of you have used AI to help cook something before? So I've never cooked shrimp and grits, but I love it when I go to places. And so I told it I want to cook shrimp and grits, but I need to know the ingredients. It gave me the ingredients. I said, I'm feeding 4 adults because teenagers eat more than adults. Create a table, and in a table format for 4 adults. I had that on one screen and Walmart pickup on the other, so I could add everything. And then when I got back to the house with those things, I pulled up Lorraine and said, now, where should I start? And it walks you through the process on how to cook those things. If you are diabetic and you say, that's a really good meal, what is a good substitute for something else? It's going to know that information as well. I've used it to sell things on Facebook. This lawnmower looks like a piece of junk because it was. But instead of hauling it to the dump, I wanted to sell it. So I uploaded the picture and I said, use the attached photo to create a Facebook Marketplace ad. And it wrote, so actually I might even do that with you. That's the good thing about AI is it doesn't take a lot of time to do it. So I'll just paste that picture in, and then I'll use that prompt. Where is it? Now, it's going to read everything in the image. So in the title, Husky LT 42 home lawn tractor, $150 as is. A red, needs mechanical work. Seat has some wear. Tires hold air. Deck intact. Is the deck intact? It doesn't even have a deck. So always fact check. And the other thing is when I want to buy something on Facebook Marketplace, I'll upload the picture of it and then give the description and say, this is what they're asking. Is it a reasonable price? And it'll actually do some research on what it looks like when it's new. It'll also give you questions to ask the person before you buy it, what you should do, and then how to have that argument with them about not buying it. Because when things on a Facebook Marketplace, you can always hope the price is negotiable. But I want you to have a couple quotes that I like to kind of discuss. And this saying came out kind of right when AI came out, that AI will not replace you, but someone using AI will. And again, as we're preparing our students for the workforce, we need to know that people who use AI are more employable. They're more likely to be attracted. I've actually got some stats on that. So one of the things I feel confident about is the instructor is in a good position, because you're teaching students how things work. You're giving them that content. I don't feel like you're going to be replaced. I don't want my students taught by a robot. I want them taught by a human who does activities with them, that has that human connection, that teaches them to make eye contact, teaches them how to collaborate. That being said, I've had some of my kids' teachers that I almost would prefer an AI robot, because the teacher wasn't engaging, the teacher wasn't making that human connection. And so AI will not replace you, but someone using AI will. Also, AI is good at tasks. It's not good at an entire job. So within your job and role, there's going to be some things that AI can do 90% of the work for you. And then there's some things that you have to do 90% of the work. And you have to figure that out. But you always need to be somewhere in that loop to make sure that's going to take place. And I think if you start seeing headlines by this company has downsized because they're using AI, I'm real skeptical about that. I think they would have downsized anyway. I think that they are using AI as an excuse to say we're downsizing because it looks better to their board and their shares, stock shares will stay as high. But there will be places that people are able to downsize because of that, because of AI. And you really need a content expert. And this is what I would drill home to my students, is that when you go into the workplace and you're asked to use AI to be resilient and keep that job, you need to know your content better than anybody else and better in history, because you are going to be asked to use AI, but the people beside you need to know the content to know what questions to ask it. So there was a regional tour by Dr. Daggett in North Carolina about, and one of the examples he used was a law firm used a program called Co-Counsel. Co-Counsel is a narrow AI platform that is used to just help with paralegal stuff. And a law firm spent just the pennies on the dollar almost to buy this Co-Counsel program, and they let about half of their paralegals go. Now, the ones they kept were the ones who knew how to use AI, but also knew their content well enough to ask what questions to ask AI. That's what's important, is knowing what questions to ask it, and you don't know what questions to ask it if you don't know your content well enough. And so drive that home with your students, that if you think you can get through this class and fool me the entire time with AI, you might be right, but at some point it's going to come back to bite you. I was talking to the Johnson & Johnson pharmaceutical guy, and he said they're getting some of this amazing applications now from candidates that are phenomenal. And they're looking forward to doing the interview with them. But when they interview them, they can't answer the questions. And if they interview them on Zoom, you can tell they're reading on another screen when they're asked the question. And they're able to detect it just like that. That person doesn't know their information. So you have to make sure you understand it. And then measure your mastery, content master beyond just written assessment. I know many of you didn't have this experience, but when I was at East Carolina, there was some classes that there was only 4 assignments. There were 4 papers I had to write, and that was my entire grade. Those days should have been gone then, but they're definitely gone now because AI can disrupt that. Now, we'll talk about AI detectors in just a second, but some universities aren't even having this conversation yet, which is why I'm proud of the North Carolina Community College system. We're having these talks about where AI lives and exists. Just to the images, AI's impact on healthcare is going to be phenomenal. It's able to catch more things. It's able to see more things. It's able to empower people to ask AI questions that their doctors won't have time to ask. Typically, when you get in front of a doctor, you get max about 30 minutes. And I don't know about you, but I've been to a nurse before, and they're sitting there behind the computer the entire time because they're trying to enter the records all at the same time. Now they're getting these lapel pins that are recording that conversation that go automatically into the medical records. So now that nurse can have a real conversation with their patient instead of trying to catalog the conversation. I think that carries true in our academic advising, that we can have students onboard themselves using AI so they come in with more meaningful questions and you're able actually to get to know that student better. So plagiarism detectors are often coupled with AI detectors, and I want to talk about and separate the two. Plagiarism detectors will definitely not work with AI. AI, every time it gives you an answer, is going to be completely different. It's not going to be word for word ever, because it's paraphrasing things. Most of you went to a 4-year university or 6 years of school, and you were trained on the information that you're teaching right now. So when a student asks you a question, you answer those questions based on the training you received. You can't tell them what class you learned that in. You might not even be able to tell what journal you read that in, but you have the correct answer and you're giving them the answer. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers. Pre-trained means AI has been trained just like you were trained. So when you ask it a question, it can answer those questions based on this training, just like you received training for 6 years. It's been trained for about 5 years, but it's really smart about pulling that information. Now, if the student questioned you when you gave them an answer and they said, well, I want evidence to support that, you could go to your office, you could pull up the evidence if you had to. Same thing with AI. You can say, I question what that says, give me 2 citations to support that claim, and then it will do a deeper dive into research and bring that up. And so even though AI hallucinates, you can get it to fact check itself as long as you're aware to be skeptical of the information it gives you. So that's a plagiarism detector. Not going to work at all. Because the way plagiarism detectors is they find sentences from research that's been done in the past, and they're able to link that to that article. AI detectors are a little different. AI detectors will detect if a student uses AI. It will. So if a student copies the paper from ChatGPT, brings it over, and submits it, it's going to detect it, right? If a student swears up and down that they didn't use AI, they might be right. If they wrote a paper and they're not really good at grammar or spelling, and they use Grammarly, and Grammarly, they take all the recommendations from Grammarly, they wrote that paper, but Grammarly is AI, and it fixes it. So AI detectors are gonna flag that as AI. So if it's 75% AI, the student could have legitimately wrote that entire paper, but Grammarly helped fix all the mistakes. Also, I was talking to someone at Rowan Cabarrus a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago. They wrote their thesis back in the 90s. They submitted it to a detector, and it said it was 100% AI. And the reason for that was it was just so well written. It was an APA format. It was all those things. So they submitted something they wrote, and it said it was AI. So let's say a student wants to figure out a way around this, because we know, I know this isn't true for your students, but when I taught, sometimes students would work harder to cheat than they would to actually just do the assignment, right? So if you go to YouTube and you type in, how do I hack an AI detector? There's a lot of videos on that. So here's one sample, because I actually wrote a paper using AI. And there's a site called undetectable.ai. It's one of the many sites out there. I submitted that paper to Undetectable, and it tells me which AI detectors are gonna flag it. So you can see copy leaks is up here, turn it in, all those things are gonna flag it. But what I can do as a student is say, I want this to be at a university level, and this is an essay, and I wanna click on the humanize button, and it just scrapes out all the AI. And so students will figure out a way. So what you're doing is, if you're just completely denying AI completely, no AI in this class at all, there's still students who are gonna use AI, and they're gonna figure a way around it. That's why we've kind of got to lean into, okay, we're going to use AI, but I'm going to tell you when to use AI. I think I'll skip down to this. So this is this article that I have published with the Online Learning Consortium. It's called the Trait Framework, just transparency in AI and teaching. And that is not only in your syllabus do you put an AI statement, but you talk about it in class. We're gonna use AI in this class, but I'm gonna tell you when to use it. And actually what you'll see is the students' anxiety level kind of releases, because I've talked to students who've had an instructor who pretends like AI doesn't exist, some that just wanna catch them using it, and then some say, use it all you want to. But being really clear with them relieves this level of anxiety by allowing them to know this is how we're gonna use it in this classroom. But I think it's important that if we're gonna tell them we're gonna use it sometimes and sometimes we're not, is be very specific when they're allowed to use it. And this is where you as the instructor has to understand the learning process well enough to say, this is an example of when you should not use AI. So I created this kind of little framework here just because it was easy. You can use icons if you want to, but you may put like an AIX by an assignment. That means you're not allowed to use AI for this assignment whatsoever. So if you're writing your first draft of your paper, don't even use spell check, don't even use Grammarly. I just want your words, your thoughts. I want to see your first draft. And then you may move over to AI, where it's AI assisted. Now submit your paper and ask for grammar clarification. Or if it was supposed to be a 5-page paper and the student can only come up with 3 pages, they may say, I'm missing some content. What would be a topic I could cover in this paper that would fit? Give me 3 or 4 bullets to write on. I wouldn't ask, and I would tell students, don't ask it to write the paragraph for you. Just give me some ideas to write it. Because once that paragraph's been written, and once the student reads that paragraph, it's hard for them to reframe that learning over to the side. It's like the pink elephant in the room. Don't think about the pink elephant. That's all you can think about, right? So telling them when they can use it. Now, when I would get to the AI supported or enhanced, is when that student has created an amazing paper or product and they understand the content, they can use AI all they want to help draft the PowerPoint presentation for that, to create images for it, to create a song that goes with it, to create a podcast that goes with it. So then they can lean into some of the AI tools that they are experienced with to use it. But I don't think AI should be optional in the class. I think if you allow 5 or 6 students just to opt out of AI, you're not doing them a service. You're doing them a disservice because when you get to the workforce, they're not going to be prepared for that. So that brings me up to something else. And we're releasing from the system office, I wrote an AI guidance handbook. And these 3 images are going to be in that guidebook. So the first image is someone working with a handsaw. That represents a classroom where AI is just not allowed or we just don't talk about it at all. That third image is a classroom that kind of embraces AI, the newest technology that helps you do things better. And I like using the construction, especially in our community college world, because you can imagine someone who's going into the workforce and they only know how to use a handsaw. They're not going to be able to build as many houses. They're not going to be as fast and efficient. They're not going to be very employable. What we know is once the business learns about AI and once the business learns about a circular saw, they're going to hand that student a circular saw, regardless if they're ready to use it or not. So what's wrong with my middle image here? The fingers are going to get chopped off, right? So if in our classrooms, we're teaching them how to use a handsaw, and then they get in the workforce and they're handed a circular saw, they're going to do some damage. They're going to get fired. They're going to hurt the company. And I'll give you an example. When I was working with a tool company and kind of advising them on how to use AI in-house, one of the samples we used was a customer complained because their packages came in a week late. Let's write an email to them to say, we apologize, this is why it was late, blah, blah, blah. Well, AI wrote a fantastic letter, but then promised a 10% discount on all products for the next year. The company said, no, not going to do that. And so a student who doesn't know that AI will make promises or make mistakes would have sent that letter out, and that company would have been hurt, and that student would have been fired. And so even we were using the example for nurses about being able to record, that nurse is still going to have to go back and fact check everything that is accurate because AI is not perfect. So let's use your laptops a little bit. You can go to either, if you've only got a phone, you can do this. You just won't be able to interact with it as well. And you don't have to go to chat.com. If you're using Copilot or Gemini or Grok or any of those tools, use whichever one you prefer. And we're going to I'm going to give you some prompts, and then we're going to use those prompts to do some comparisons. Check on your neighbor, make sure they got it all ready to go. You should be looking at your friend's screen and making sure. And if they don't, chastise them and publicly humiliate them. No, let's not do that. Okay, who needs another minute? Raise your finger if you need another minute to get to a large language model. Okay. All right, here's our first prompt. And when you write a prompt, you don't have to capitalize, you don't have to put punctuation in it, but just get it close. Oh, and I got Malin up there. I thought, woo. Create a 5-slide presentation outline on the history of Blue Ridge Community College. Each slide 5 bullets, max 10 words per bullet. And if you're logged into an account, you actually can talk that into the system, or if you're using a phone, you can take a picture of the prompt and hit submit, and it will write it for you. I'm going to do this along with you all. All right. How many of you have got a 5-slide presentation? I want you to compare it with the person next to you and see what you notice. I want you to pay attention. Is it word for word? Are all the facts the same? Are all the dates the same? All right. So, did anybody have word for word the same PowerPoint presentation? Not going to happen. I can almost guarantee you that's not going to happen. Matter of fact, the slide titles were even different, right? Did anybody have different years and start dates when the college started? Yeah, you did? So what years did you have? What was the conflict? Right, so 69 and 70. Would you feel comfortable getting in front of the Board of Trustees and giving a presentation on Blue Ridge with this? No. And if you were an expert at Blue Ridge, if you've been here for 20 years, you probably will be able to fact that pretty quickly to know what's right and what's wrong. You as an instructor in the classroom, when you see something wrong, red flags go off. A student who's sitting by themselves in a classroom or at home, they don't know that there's a different date. They don't know to ask that question. That's why understanding that this is a tool to help you share your learning, but not always really good at fact checking and make sure everything's right. That they still need to pay attention to the instructor. They still need to follow those guidelines and when to use it and when not to use it. So what would we do in a situation like that where we've got 2 years? We teach students research skills by just saying, highlighting it and saying, my colleague has a different year for start date. Can you provide 2 citations to support that claim? And then they research it and then they can fact check it. Either it's going to give you citations to support the claim, or it's going to correct itself and say, my apologies, I had the wrong date. But sometimes it comes in how well you write prompts. And so let's say there was another Blue Ridge Community College out there somewhere. There is? There you go. And that's where if I said Blue Ridge Community College in North Carolina would have been a better prompt. Because you could be getting, in West Virginia, you're getting data from that. So it's different. And that's why it's important to teach students the importance of prompt writing, the importance of giving it context to make sure you do those things right. Now, just for time's sake, what I did was, I'll show you what I did. I asked it to write a full transcript for each slide. So it wrote a transcript. I could have had that transcript written in Chinese or Russian or whatever. And then I asked it to create a PowerPoint file for me. So I'm going to download that PowerPoint, and you'll see that it's in the notes pane, the transcript. So, and if you use the design feature in PowerPoint, you can really quickly make a really good looking PowerPoint presentation. Again, you don't want to start making a presentation until you fact check everything either. But this is something important that you want to do with your students, to let them see in real time how to fact check it. And if you can find one particular topic that it doesn't do really good on, that's what you should use. That's why I like using Strawberry, because that's a really easy way for us to see it doesn't work. But it's a phenomenal tool, and once you understand and helping you guide, and you can start prompt writing it. And I'm gonna actually give you some tips on how to prompt write when you do prompt it. And I've already seen some people's computer screens, but you can ask it to create the image to go with slide 1, and it will create an image that goes with it. ChatGPT's gotten really bad about actually trying to put the text from slide 1 into the image. And so usually I'll start a new conversation and say, create an image that shows this. So I want you to remember RICE. Anytime you write a prompt, remember RICE with 2 C's. Role. Tell it to act as. Give it in a role, and we're actually going to use AI in just a second to talk about why it's important to assign a role to AI. Then you give it the instructions. We're typically good at giving it instructions. We say, we want you to do this, and it'll do it. But if you can give it a role and then give it context, tell it, as you saw in my custom and directions, I told it to act as an administrative assistant, and that I work at the system office. You can put in your job title, your role. You can say, what's your learning management system here? It's what? Okay, right. OpenLMS Moodle, right? So you could say, act as an instructional design in Moodle and help me design an anatomy and physiology module based on this topic. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but it may give you ideas on what you can incorporate, and it will also know what Moodle tools are available. Constraints, the example we just did was 5 bullets per slide, 10 words per bullet. If you're writing an email, you could say, I want the email to be less than 150 words. One of my favorite is the Lexile level, or you could say grade level. Write this email to a student at the 8th grade reading level. And the reason I like using 8th grade reading level is because, like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, if you read those, they're actually written at the 8th grade reading level. That's so public consumption can understand it. So it's not like we're dumbing down the information. It's a way of just communicating. So that's one of the constraints. Now, if you have an example to upload with it, it's fantastic. So if you're applying for a grant that you need Perkins funding for, you want to buy a piece of equipment, say, I'm buying this piece of equipment, use Perkins to help justify this for Perkins, and it will take those Perkins standards and align why that's needed, and it'll do a fantastic job of aligning how it could do it. And then you have to fact check it to make promises that you won't keep, but you can still use it. If you're writing any type of grant, if you've had a letter that you've used in the past, you can upload it so it kind of matches that format. So having those examples is very helpful. So let's talk about and kind of do a demonstration of why it's important to act as a role. You can assign it personalities. So you can say, act as a guidance counselor, act as an instructional designer. As Leon's Law comes out, act as an angry parent. How do I respond to this? One example, the way I used it was, my father was in the Air Force for 4 years, back in the 70s and 80s. And just about 6 or 7 years ago, he tried to get VA benefits for hearing loss. He got a letter that said it was denied. And to me, that didn't make sense. And he was appealing it, and in that time, he actually had a stroke, so he wasn't able to appeal it himself. So I took it. I looked for lawyers that would help us get those benefits. Then I went to ChatGPT. I said, act as a lawyer that specializes in VA benefits and help me appeal this letter. It pulled out all types of VA benefits that you should get, why the federal law should do this. One of the things I found out is that it was the burden of proof was on the Air Force to prove he had hearing loss before he entered the Air Force. So that was key. And then I wrote a letter to the VA with lawyer language. It looked like it came from a law office, and it was able to appeal that letter and then get his disabilities. And so telling it to take on that role was really important. So I'm going to explain to you, but I'm also going to hopefully double here and showing you a way that you can use AI in your classroom to lay the foundation for something that you're about to teach. So mixture of experts is why it's important for people to use a personality or assign a personality. And together, we're going to learn what mixture of experts is. So we're going to start a new chat on your computer. And the prompt you're going to enter is act as an expert in LLMs and explain mixture of experts. How many of you have got an output by now? Okay. Does it make a lot of sense to you? So when I first did it, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Because again, I was on the road, I heard something on a podcast, I said, oh, that's important. I wrote down mixture of experts. Then I get back to chat, and then I thought, wow, this still is above my head. So when we introduce new concepts in the classroom, most of it goes above their head. They've never heard of it before. This is the first time they're seeing it. So I asked you to ask AI what mixture of experts is, and it gave you basically an academic paper on what mixture of experts is. So right below that prompt, I want you to type in, help me understand this topic, explain it to me like I'm a fifth grader that enjoys, and then you insert a hobby or interest you have, and then press submit. You can use bike riding, you can use Star Wars, you could use your favorite TV show, you can use cosmetology, cooking. Now that you've got that output, and as you're reading through, does mixture of experts make a little bit more sense to you? Anybody want to volunteer what their interest or hobby was? Horses? What? Yeah, what was yours? Golf? All right, tell me how golf was explained. Yeah, and it goes on, right? It sounds like a Super Bowl, right? Would be fun with that. So golf was the example, and she's able to probably now understand that when you're playing golf, if you're in the sand pit, you want to get somebody who's good at getting bunkers, right? Well, now that used to, I would say, if you had a student in your math class that wants to know how slope aligns, you could design a lesson plan for how slope aligns with being a welder. Then you could go to the next student and say, design a lesson plan for how slope aligns with pharmaceuticals. But by using a prompt like this, every one of you just got individualized instruction. You took something that was meaningful to you and something you already learned, so you're taking new content and AI is allowing you to connect it to old content. So as I go through this next slide, and if I were to teach deeper into this topic, you're going to be making that connection the entire time. So in the mixture of experts, I want you to look at this light blue box here. as a data warehouse, huge data warehouse, but instead of computers and stacks of towers, think of thousands and thousands of PhD level people standing in there just kind of twiddling their thumbs, right? They're just waiting to be called on. They're like the golfers who are sitting in the golf cart waiting to be called on, depending on what shot's needed. This pink box down here is your prompt. If you write a good prompt and you say, and you submit it, and it goes to a gatekeeper or gating network, in a golfing example, it would be a golfing coach that would say, okay, I need you to come up. When you say act as a lawyer that specializes in VA benefits and you hit submit, it's only able to pull in 2 experts to answer your questions. And by telling it to act as a specific role, it knows which experts to pull in to answer that question. So you're not pulling in a random PhD candidate or PhD person to answer your question. It's very specific about who it is asking. It can't pull in all 1,000. It's only going to pull in 2. As models advance, it may pull in 4. But right now, a mixture of experts. So if I were teaching this as a concept in my classroom, I could go to deeper dive, and I can almost guarantee you, your brain's going to make that connection the entire time to that interest or hobby. Oh, this is what it means in the golfing world, or this is what it means in horses, right? So it's going to make those connections for you, which is a phenomenal tool that now you're laid the foundation, you can kind of move on with that. So with 10 minutes to go, I want to make sure I get to everything. So your syllabus statement might look like this. And I'm not telling you what to put in your syllabus. That's up to you all. I'm just giving you an example. So once we talked about AIX, AI plus. So in this class, AI tools may be used for brainstorming ideas and improving ideas drafts. However, the final assessment must reflect your own writing and understanding, and AI usage must be disclosed as a statement at the end of the assignment. Now, I have seen some policies that said every time you use AI, you're going to write a reflection on how you used it. I think writing reflections is important, but I wouldn't want them to write a reflection every single time, because that takes away from the time it saves them to be able to do some work. And so one of my sons was in Business 110, and in that class, they said, you're going to pick from 3 cultures to write 1 paper on. In the world of AI now, I might actually assign them all 3 cultures. Because AI gets you that information, you can get that paper out quicker, you can understand all 3 cultures instead of just learning that one. If a student submits a C-level paper to me, where it does okay, but it's not great, but okay, the student's happy with a C, I would say take that back to AI, and I want an A-level paper. You can raise that rigor in your classroom now. When they take a C-level paper to an A-level paper, they have to prompt it well enough that they're learning that content as they go through, right? So to get to that high caliber paper, they're actually going to have to prompt really well to know what questions to ask. And so I would encourage you to start reframing your classroom about raising the bar in your classroom. If you're allowing AI and I'm allowing you to use it, then why would you hand me this trash, right? We want all A students to be submitting those A-level papers. I will say this, in my experience, it's great at creating rubrics, right? So if you have a rubric and you want a rubric, it will do that fantastically. What I wouldn't do is use that, so you could upload that rubric and then you could upload that paper and it will give you a score. I would not lean on that score at all. What I've found that the scores that it usually gives me is usually a B. Regardless of how good it is or how bad it is, it's going to give me a B. So I would ask, provide me feedback based on this rubric. Where did the student miss? Where did the student hit? And then I would still be the one that assigns that score. So again, you got to keep that human in the loop of that. Going back to this PowerPoint presentation, I could say, I want you to create 1 multiple choice question, 1 question per slide, and each question needs to be a Bloom's level 6 question, provide me the answer, and provide feedback to why that answer is correct. So this is in that same conversation and chat thread where we did the research on Bloom's taxonomy. And so it's going to build this assessment for me. It's really good at coming up with case studies. So if you have case studies, but you want to mix it up a little bit, you can ask for us another scenario. You can make it relevant to the news, right? So if you wanted to talk about how you want to put Helene in some of your prompt writing to make it more relevant to students, this scenario needs to be talked about with that. It's able to make those connections. What you're seeing it do now is think. So ChatGPT likes, most language models like to get something out fast and quick, but it took time to think. It thought for 30 seconds. So it's giving me these answers, and actually a better prompt would say, make sure to just double check that the answers are actually correct, and also double check that some of those answers couldn't actually be interpreted as being correct. You know, you've done the design of question banks first. You have to have good distractors. You could ask AI to create better distractors if you would like. And so you can see it really quickly create questions. I am using Moodle, and I would like you to create a file and write the code so I can export this as an item bank into my learning management system. And then give me step-by-step directions on how to import it. So it's going to take a little time because it's going to write some code, but it's going to take those 5 questions and write them in a format that I can export those questions into a notepad. It probably will create the file for me. And then it'll give me step-by-step directions of how to go to Moodle, go to question banks, import, and bring in those questions. So if you're using open educational resources, fantastic tools on building different assessments. And if you think as we know, it's never going to be the same. So the questions are going to be completely different than they've ever seen before. And so if you get an error message, and this is very possible, that you try to upload it to Moodle and it gives you an error message, then all you have to do is take that error message back to ChatGPT and say, here's the error message I'm receiving, please fix it. And then it will rewrite the code to fix it. So I would try a couple of questions out to make sure it's doing it right. And then once it gets it right, then you can start building more. So here's 3 paragraphs, create 1 question per paragraph. Here's 3 more paragraphs, create it. Now consolidate all these questions into 1 file that I can export to Moodle. And so it's giving you step by step. Now, depending on what version of Moodle it was last trained on, you might have to say, this is Moodle version blah, blah, blah. So that could be part of the issue. So with that, I've hoped that you've learned a couple things that you can take away immediately and start using in your classroom. I hope that you're starting to have conversations with your students about AI in your classroom. And again, being open to hearing from them. Having that dialogue of why they shouldn't use AI, because if you give students notes and they have to take notes and then you say, summarize your notes in 1 paragraph, AI can do that really quickly, but that's something that robs them from the opportunity of learning, which reminds me of one more slide that I want to show, and that is way down here, somewhere in here. When I took it out because I thought this would be, here it is. When you see this child, what do you think is happening right here? He's hitting a thorn, right? If you had children, you know, you can tell them over and over again, do not touch that rose bush, it's going to hurt you. But at some point, you just step back, let the child touch the rose bush and get hurt. Then they're not going to touch it anymore. So I like using the word FAIL as an acronym. That is, fail in the classroom in a community college. You want your students to have the opportunity to fail in the classroom so when they get in the workforce, they feel comfortable when they make a mistake. But failure is also a first attempt in learning. When a student makes a mistake, that's a great place for them to learn. I've sat behind students who were doing web page design, and I knew their web page would not work, but I didn't intervene because I needed them to go and troubleshoot and fix that out, because then they're more likely not to make that mistake again. And so that's what we've got to teach our students, that if you use AI too much, then once you get on your own and AI is not able to solve your problem, you're going to be in trouble. So it is 3 o'clock, so I will say, as we wrap up, if you'll scan that's the wrong QR code. Hold on. I want you to scan this. So we did a KWLA. I want you to tell me what you learned and how you plan to apply it, and also see if we nudged you in your ability to explain AI to a colleague.